Hey everybody, it's your dear old Uncle Armored Otter here. This is normally the part of the video where I would put like a weird joke or some sort of upsetting off-color commentary to make you try to laugh, but I don't have anything for you today. I'm just sort of going off script, so instead, accept this really funny, fantastic thing that I put on screen. Oh yes. Look at it go. Isn't it marvelous? Isn't it truly fantastic? As always, I'd like to ask you to like, comment, subscribe if you do, in fact, like the video and you want to see more like it. Got a ton of videos like this on my channel. All of them are way better produced and way more thought out than this one, but you know, I didn't have a whole lot of time this week, and I just wanted to make sure that I got this video to you ASAP because I've been having a ton of fun with this build, and I think you're going to enjoy it too. Without further ado, let's talk about the pure Aether Callidor's Tempest Spellbinder. Starting with the gear. Our gear is all about converting as much weapon damage over to Callidor's Tempest as possible, and funneling as much of our damage types into Aether damage. So, with that being said, our two-handed weapon is the Scion of the Screaming Veil. It does a lot of cool stuff for us, including a lot of flat and scaling Aether damage. But the big two things that it does is it converts up to 60% of vitality to Aether damage, which is huge for us, and it also adds an additional 35% of weapon damage to Callidor's Tempest. On top of all that, it's got a powerful proc called the Veil Ripple, which it looks beautiful. I don't know if it's super strong. It feels pretty good, but it looks absolutely beautiful. I love the aesthetics of it. Couple that with the belt, the rare belt, the Chains of Ygrod. You can find that in Port Valbury. This is going to finish off our vitality to Aether conversion with another up to 60% vitality to Aether conversion, making sure that 100% of vitality damage is converted over to Aether damage. This is key. This also gives us +1 to all skills and Arcanist, which is wonderful. Another interesting choice that we've made are the Mage Lord bands. These do a lot of good stuff for us, flat and scaling Aether damage, of course, but the big thing is that between the two of them, you can get up to 60% of elemental damage converted to Aether damage, and a lot of our Callidor's Tempest is elemental damage, so that's going to give us a huge buff. Finally, we've got the Krieg set. The Krieg set is fantastic for a number of reasons. It is heavy armor, so it gives us lots of base armor. There's a ton of physical resistance all over these gear pieces, I think up to 16% total, which is fantastic. On top of all that, it gives us a lot of scaling Aether damage, a lot of flat Aether damage, just a lot of good stuff. And finally, the 5 set bonus gives us more flat Aether damage, as well as 25 reduced flat resistances to Reckless Power, which is really strong. It really opens up our devotion path. Speaking of devotions, let's talk about devotions. Of course, we go for Widow. Widow will give us the only source of reduced Aether resistance in the entire tree, so it's fantastic. We also go for Spear of the Heavens. Spear of the Heavens gives us lots of scaling Aether damage in the nodes themselves, as well as a proc that does not need to be attached to a damaging ability, which is huge. We can just attach it to one of our buffs, and that goes off anytime we get hit. Really strong for a huge chunk of Aether damage. We also go for Kraken. Kraken gives us a ton of scaling damage, as well as cast speed and physical resistance, all good stuff. We also get Bat. Bat is fantastic since we convert 100% of vitality to Aether damage. Bat is going to be doing a ton of Aether damage while sustaining our health, which is huge. Finally, I like to pick up Phoenix. Phoenix is good in the same reason that Bat is good. It does a flat Aether damage for the proc, but also does fire damage, which is going to get converted to Aether damage thanks to our ring set, and it also gives us flat damage absorption, which is very strong. In the Arcanist tree, go all the way for 50 out of 50 points for Reckless Power. Reckless Power is fantastic. We get a ton of plus skill bonuses to it through our gear set. Additionally, Reckless Power, thanks to the 5 set Krieg bonus, is going to shred flat resistances, which is super strong. Down here at the bottom, Fabric of Reality is wonderful since it gives us flat Aether damage and scaling Aether damage. Always wonderful. Definitely scale up both nodes of Callidor's Tempest over the cap. 26 out of 16 for Callidor's Tempest, and 18 out of 12 for Inferno. And you also want to overcap Maven's Sphere of Protection. That is a must. As much percent damage absorption as you can get. You want to get Mirror of Vortices at a soft cap, just to make sure that you get the cooldown to as low as possible. You also want to get nodes like Inner Focus and Overload to their soft cap, so you can get as much of those flat stats as possible. Over in the Necromancer tree, we want to go for 40 out of 40 points, which will unlock the Blood Boil node, which allows our Siphon Souls to shred even more offensive ability. Coupled with a Mark of Anathema, will allow our Siphon Souls to shred, I think, around 220 offensive ability, which is really going to bolster our low defensive ability stat. Another important node to overcap is Soul Harvest. Soul Harvest gives us flat cold and vitality damage. That's going to help our Callidor's Tempest do a ton more damage, especially since all of that vitality damage is getting converted over to Aether damage, and a huge chunk of that cold damage is getting converted over to Aether damage thanks to our rings. You also want to soft cap Mark of Torment. We want to get the duration as high as possible and the cooldown as low as possible. Ill Omen, get that to 10 out of 10 points because we want the reduced target's damage to be as high as possible. After that, the points become really less significant, so 25% is a sweet spot at 10 out of 10 points. Spectral Binding gives us everything this build needs. Flat Aether damage, scaling Aether damage, flat health, and offensive ability. This node is an absolute powerhouse. Put as many points in this node as you possibly can. And then of course you want to overcap Spectral Wrath because Spectral Wrath is the source of Aether resistance reduction in the Necromancer tree. Get that as high as possible. I got it at 15 out of 10 points. And that gives me minus 30% Aether resistance as well as a really decent chunk of damage. As far as playing this build is concerned, it really feels strong. The damage that it can dish out is really insane. You can absolutely melt wave after wave of enemy. You got a ton of consistent DPS from all the procs as well as Callidor's Tempest. And you're really sturdy thanks to Maven's Sphere of Protection and Ill Omen. The only thing that I will say about this build is that it can be quite punishing if you play it incorrectly. If you're not quite comfortable with how the build is performed, then you might get a little bit tripped up. You need to really pay attention to Mark of Torment and Mirror and make sure that you're juggling those cooldowns appropriately. You need to make sure that you're refreshing your Ill Omen every 5 seconds. You need to make sure that you're using Siphon Souls on cooldown, so you're always shredding that huge chunk of offensive ability so you're not getting crit nearly as often. But apart from that, if you play this build well, this build will take you very, very far. So far I've been able to do Shattered Realm 70 to 71 Deathless. I'm still working on getting up to 75 to 76 Deathless. It's definitely possible, just haven't quite done it yet. I have done Crucible 150 to 170 in a startling 7.5 minutes, which is a great time for me, especially as I'm not the best player, especially when it comes to Crucible. And I'm working my way through the super bosses. So far I've done Lokar, but I've got others that are on the docket that are going to get done real soon. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, if you found some insight here, if you liked what you saw, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. Because if you don't, then my 40 kids are going to starve in the winter. And that's going to be on you. Can you handle that? Can you handle the guilt of my 40 kids dying cold and alone? Ah, you can? Ah, drats, man.